To continue on our conversation about obesity management and lifestyle approaches, in particular to obesity management for BPK 417, we're going to move into talking about nutrition therapy. And what I want you to be able to do from this unit is to talk about both weight-based and non-weight-based nutrition and dietary approaches. And again, we're going to pull out the Obesity Algorithm, the 5 A's of obesity management, and Obesity Canada's clinical guidelines for medical nutrition therapy for obesity. And I want you to be able to offer recommendations for nutrition therapy with obesity. And always, we'd like to add in some systems thinking in here as well. How can you apply the intervention level framework to suggest individual and population nutrition strategies? So we'll start with the obesity algorithm, and a good place to start is to contrast two different paradigms that can be used for nutrition therapy. One being a weight-based traditional nutrition therapy approach, right? So this type of approach talks about changing your diet in order to, well, for the most part, lose weight. And the problem with this approach, which can be successful to a point, may underestimate the impact of various physiological and environmental influences that contribute to obesity, and it may contribute to weight stigma as well. So if someone is just focused on their weight and they're not thinking about how sleep or their environment or their mental health and these kind of things affect their diet and affect weight as well, that can impact their and hunger levels. That can impact their likelihood to lose weight, and it also can be really discouraging in that case as well. And it may contribute to the paradigm that weight defines your worth, and if you're not at a particular weight, then there's something wrong with you, which we really want to move away from in psychologically sound approaches to obesity. And so, not to say that a weight-centric approach isn't possible or isn't desirable for some people, but there are some considerations with that approach, although that has been the norm. There is also kind of this newer area that focuses more on a weight-inclusive, non-diet or non-weight focused approach to obesity and nutrition therapy. You would still recognize obesity as a chronic disease. Weight would be highlighted as a normal part of body diversity. Again, a bit of a different paradigm there. And then little to no emphasis is placed on weight, and nutrition is talked about more for quality of life and health and deliciousness and these kind of things that aren't necessarily weight focused. So these are two different approaches. Obviously, there's been way more research into the first, but something to keep in mind. And again, it depends on the population or the person you're working with, what they choose to go with. So I love this other concept from the obesity algorithm, which suggests that the most appropriate nutritional therapy for weight loss is one that is safe, effective, and the one to which the patient will adhere. As we saw in the unit on interventions for weight loss, adherence, sustainability, consistency, these are the most important things that predict success with weight loss or health outcomes. So yeah, sure, someone can go on an extreme diet, but will they actually be able to keep that up? Do they like it? Is it ruining their lives? Well, then that's a problem, right? And even though it might show short-term effects on weight or other outcomes, is that messing things up for the long term? And so, more of a holistic, more of a complex systems approach to nutrition therapy wouldn't just look at like, okay, what exactly are you eating? Not just the what, but about maybe the behavior of eating. How slowly are you eating? How fast is someone eating? What are the social and environmental influences? How does your culture come into this? How does tradition come into? How does economics come into this? How does food availability come into this? Maybe what are the nutrition skills or knowledge base that are coming into this as well? And are there medications that are prescribed that are affecting, weight gain or nutritional deficiencies, etc. And that's why I put that like complexity kind of diagram on the side there, because I want you to keep remembering that every case is different and that our behaviors are not just affected by our desire to behave. Our behaviors are affected by the system within which we live and the system of our body as well, and the system of our behaviors too. And these are things that I know can feel very overwhelming to consider, but if we are really truly wanting to make a difference in a person's life, we have to see them more than just a number on a scale, and that the way we eat is often reflective of other things going on in our lives, not just our decisions to eat or not to eat. So to get a little bit more into specifics, these are some summarized recommendations from Obesity Canada for nutrition therapy in obesity management. Jennifer Brown, excellent dietitian, is one of the people that was leading this project. And number one on the list, and this is for practitioners, is that healthy eating is a priority for all. Eating isn't just like, oh, you have this health concern, you have obesity, now you need to worry about it. It's something for all of us. Another main message, love it, individualize, not one size fits all. A couple slides forward, I might as well present it now, is that there isn't one specific diet. The keto diet, intermittent fasting, low carb, South Beach, paleo, you don't need to know anything about these. The main message from this slide is that they all work for some people, but none of them work for all people. And no one absolutely needs to go on any of these, right? They all work in the same way by promoting a caloric deficit if weight is the outcome that you seek. But the question is, are they sustainable? Are they enjoyable? Are they realistic? Are they affordable? Do they mess with your social life? And do they promote a healthy relationship with body and mind and soul, maybe as well? So no one size fits all, emphasize individual eating patterns, food quality, and a healthy relationship with food. They also recommend including mindfulness-based eating practice that may help with food cravings or to reduce reward-driven eating. So we'll look at that in another unit, but this means being more attentive when you eat, slowing down, enjoying food more, not just, I call it the McDonald's fry syndrome, where you're driving away from McDonald's, shoveling fries, no judgment, but shoveling fries into your mouth while you're driving without even thinking about them, right? In that case, we're not necessarily enjoying food as much as we can. It's not necessarily building a healthy relationship with food, and the memory parts of our brain aren't keeping as good track of how much we're eating. And so notice that calorie restriction isn't the first thing on the list. It is something that is recommended for obesity, and it does work, at least short term. We saw in those studies, caloric restriction does help to promote more weight loss, especially in the beginning. However, just focusing on caloric restriction is often not sustainable and can affect homeostatic and non-homeostatic appetite in a way that promotes food intake and weight regain. And that's why we're also going to have a module on how to manage appetite signals as well. Okay, so caloric restriction, it is the key to the caloric deficit, but you have to be careful on how you do this because there are these physiological adaptations which make that hard to sustain, and it can also impact mental health. So yes and no as far as caloric restriction. I think framing it as caloric restriction is not a good idea, because as soon as I hear restriction, I feel like lack mentality. I feel like, oh my God, what are you taking away from me? So can we focus on what we should increase, like protein or fiber or voluminous foods or whole foods, instead of focusing on what we're taking away? Okay. Something else to bring up more specifically is that vitamin D and vitamin B12 and iron are common deficiencies in individuals with obesity, as are other micronutrient deficiencies, especially if someone's had bariatric surgery as well. So that's a good place for a dietitian or a doctor to do a screening and to decide on the best supplement or food based approach to that. Okay, collaborative care with a dietitian if possible. Okay, and the messages, so those are for practitioners, but the messages for people living with obesity, they're pretty similar. Nutrition is for everyone, regardless of your size. Number 2, no one size fits all approach. Number 3, how you eat is as important as what and how much you eat. Eating mindfully, healthy relationship with food. Love all of these. Dieting or severely restricting the amount you eat may cause changes to your body that can lead to weight regain over time. And so we have to be careful how that is framed and how that is done. And then if you can see a registered dietitian, but if they can afford it, that is absolutely an option. If again, you want to get a bit more specific with nutrition recommendations, these honestly, I look at these and these are the same things I recommend in my general nutrition course. Like there's nothing that shows up here that's very obesity specific. These are just good healthy nutrition principles, period. Whole foods, protein, fiber, complex carbohydrates, fruits, vegetables, less trans fat, less sodium, less saturated fat. Does that show up there as well? Can't hurt, less saturated fat. Plants, good, less ultra-processed food. These are kind of the basics of healthy nutrition that are for everyone, not just individuals with obesity. And then as far as collecting data on someone's diet, depending on how much time you have with them, but you can collect data not just on what someone's eating, but also on who's cooking food, how they're planning for it, what their access to food is, where they're eating, how their family or culture is influencing their nutrition habits, and then other behaviors that might be worth screening for, again, depending on your scope of practice, is readiness for change, what else they've done to lose weight in the past, and what barriers or have come out of that, or what successes have come out of that you can use to build on. And then triggers. I think that's a really important thing for all of us to assess our own behaviors and figure out what are the triggers that often trigger the behavior we're doing, whatever that behavior might be. Awareness is a really good place to start if you want to change behavior. And then, is there binge eating, nighttime eating, emotional eating? All of these things are good things to screen for as well. And again, ideally someone with the appropriate scope of practice that is trained in dealing with these things. That's why, again, an obesity-oriented dietitian is a great person that can help with this. And then I wanted to end off this unit with an example of a non-weight-centric approach to eating, which may or may not be appropriate in obesity, again, depending on the desire of that person, what outcome is important to them. So intuitive eating, it's been around for a while. It did have a bit of a weight loss focus when it first came around, but now weight is kind of not part of the conversation at all. And it's really about getting in tune with your own body signals and developing a positive relationship with food, gentle nutrition. So yeah, eating for health, but kind of in a gentle way. So not in an obsessive way. So yeah, eating whole foods and plants, eating salads because they're delicious, and they are, instead of eating salads because I have to, and because there's something wrong with me, I have to eat a salad. Bit of a reframing there. And then cope with your emotions, respect your body, feel your fullness, discover satisfaction, challenge the food police a little bit. There's a bit of fear of quieting external noise, right? Challenge people that are going to tell you what to eat, because no one knows your body better than you do. It's been my experience as someone who's taught nutrition for 20 years that people can get very identity oriented with their diet. And sometimes when people find a diet that works for them, they think that's the diet that's going to work for everyone. And then they will start to police other people's behavior if it doesn't fall into line with that. And you got to be careful with that. And just because other people have restricted behaviors doesn't mean you have to have restricted behaviors. Just because some people eat vegetarian, just because some people follow a keto diet, doesn't mean you have to as well. And you need to learn to challenge these people who can often be very vocal and sometimes judgmental as well in their approaches. Okay. Reject diet mentality as well. This definitely came out of the 90s when diet mentality was fierce and it did a lot of damage as well. And so a little bit of evidence to throw in here. Prospective study, epidemiological, not showing causation by any means, but they did find in this study that greater baseline intuitive eating and increases in intuitive eating from baseline were associated with better depressive symptoms, better self-esteem, better body satisfaction, because there was lower high body dissatisfaction, and better weight control behaviors as well. And binge eating ameliorated as well. So might be a practice that is for some individuals with binge eating. It really depends, honestly. It's not really meant as a weight loss strategy, but it might be able to help with some of the emotional related factors associated with binge eating. So again, non-weight centric approach. I'm not saying it's the best approach for obesity, but it gives you an idea of what that might look like. And again, let's throw in the intervention level framework here. This kind of challenges the dominant paradigm that we have to take an approach to our health that is weight centric. Okay, so a non-weight centric approach is a new paradigm, and so the goals are different. Instead of a goal of you have to lose weight, the goal becomes I want to eat in a way that promotes my health. I want to eat in a way that doesn't make me feel hungry all the time. Ooh, that's a great goal as well. And then so what do you have to change in your structure, in your life, or how do you design an environment, or how do you help people get the right information in order for them to make those better decisions, or so things are set up so that that decision making and that action is more supported? Are there feedback loops that you can interrupt there? Does someone have a feedback loop that's like, weight defined as my worth, so I have to lose weight. I try to lose weight and I can't lose weight, so I have bad self-worth. So that's negative on the self-worth, right? And because my self-worth got worse, maybe that discourages me. We could work with delays with feedback loops here. So if someone is only dieting to lose weight, and there's often a huge delay between changing your nutrition habits and seeing weight loss, and since there's a huge delay between changing your nutrition habits and seeing weight loss, there's no reinforcement, right? When you lose weight, then that encourages you to diet more, perhaps. But because there's a big delay, you don't have that reinforcement of the behavior. Do you put in a different reinforcement? Do you shorten the delay by changing what outcome you're looking for? So maybe the next part in that feedback loop isn't losing weight, but the next part in that feedback loop is feeling in control of my hunger. Maybe the next part in that feedback loop is eating whole foods and increasing the amount of whole foods in my diet, right? I want to eat healthier, so I eat whole foods. I am proud of myself for eating whole foods. And that helps me eat healthier, so I'm going to keep eating those whole foods, right? So can you work with that instead of just working with structural elements? Okay. And this again gives you ideas of population level examples and individual levels of the intervention level framework. And these are kind of, I would argue, some of the ones that we might want to change in order to help people develop better relationship with food, better relationship with their diets, and ideally help them not only manage their weight, but also improve their health and improve their quality of life and improve their relationship with themselves. Isn't that the goal? In the next unit, we're going to talk a little bit about managing our satiety and managing cravings as well on our path, again, to this healthier relationship with food. See you then.